Well, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you're dialing in from this great big wide world of ours. Welcome to The Unspoken Truth. My name is Robert Brust, and I'm flying solo here today on the podcast. Today, I'm excited to be doing a solo show. Unfortunately, Ed's a bit indisposed, and he's unable to make it to the call today. So I'll be taking the reins and leading the charge here as a solo podcast. This show won't go as long as it normally does, of course, because there's no introduction and there's no real discussion that's actually going on. But rest assured, folks, I've got some really interesting information for you. And I believe I've got maybe the biggest story in American politics is unfolding as we speak right now. And I think it's the biggest story in American politics in history, in actual fact. It's quite a big thing where Biden has been implicated in a $5 million scandal, and all the evidence is coming out. And I've got some information that will catch you up in the next 15 minutes. So when somebody's talking to you about that, you'll have a dedicated opinion, and you can watch this corruption unfold in real time, if you like. So it's an interesting time in history, and you might be wondering, well, Rob, why do you even care about this, mate? You're sitting there in Sydney and Australia. What do you care about American politics for? Well, the reason that I care about it, folks, is because it's important. It's important to see how our culture is being affected by the deep state. And I'll give you an example. Just in the last maybe half an hour, I was just looking through my Twitter feed as I was getting ready for this show, and what I saw was one of the representatives here in Australia, he's no longer an Australian politician, Craig Kelly, has got an FOI request that came out that the Australian government was attempting to censor him during COVID. And it also came out that there was some other people in Parliament that were also being censored by the Australian government. So they were coming out and speaking out. George Christensen was speaking out against the government, against vaccinations, against all of what the government was saying. They were saying the opposite of that, and the government didn't like it, and the government were reaching out to Twitter going, oi, get rid of them. They were reaching out to Facebook and saying, oi, get rid of them. So if you do something that the government doesn't like, if you do something that is against the narrative that's going against the grain, you will be shut down, ladies and gentlemen. Make no mistake about it. And that is the unspoken truth. The whole reason that I created this show was to get these things off my chest, because I can't be the only person on planet Earth thinking these things. I can't be the only person thinking, hey man, that seems really corrupt. That seems really wrong. And I know for a fact I am not the only person out there thinking these things. And sometimes I feel like I'm a little bit crazy, where I look at what's happening in mainstream media. I see people getting censored. I see all of these things going on. But then every now and then, these FOI requests take a long time to come to fruition. But every now and then, I'm validated by those FOI requests and other things that I see in the media. And I'm not crazy. I'm not going out of my mind. The world is a very strange place where it's upside down, and the realities of what we see on a day-to-day basis are just not what you think they are. The whole point of The Unspoken Truth is to pull back the curtain and to figure out what's going on behind all of this. And today, as I mentioned, I've got a couple of reports to catch you up on the Biden stuff and what's going on with them as well. So let me just show you what's going to be on this. We've got this thing called a 1023, and there's a senator in America who's come out and he's pulled the 1023 from the FBI. And it turns out that there's now 17, or apparently there's 17 voice recordings, 15 with Hunter and 2 with Joe about this bribery scandal. We've got an eyewitness. I'll show you that eyewitness statement as well. And the FBI were dragged in front of a Senate estimates hearing, if you like, an American version of that. And they were grilled on that. And I'll catch you up with what they've said and how they've behaved, because in my mind, it's actually completely out of order. If this was all a big beat up and none of it was true, why doesn't Joe Biden just come out and say, just release the evidence, release everything? I haven't done anything wrong. If the guy was innocent, he'd just come out and claim his innocence. Instead, he's taunting the media by saying, well, where's the money? Show me where the money is. Ladies and gentlemen, you might be asking yourself, why do I care? Why does Rob care? Why should I care about American politics? Why do I care about this? Well, this is the very fabric of our society, folks. Law and order is the basis and the foundation of our entire society. And if that doesn't actually come to pass, meaning if it's not upheld, you can't break the law to enforce the law, right? But if the law is not applied equally to these politicians, even in another country, what does that mean to you in your country? Is the law being applied equally in your country, or is it just only when people feel like it, only when law enforcement feels like it. It's a very strange thing. Society is not what we've been led to believe for up until now in human history, because it's rules for thee and rules for me. And it's a very, very, very strange thing. And I want to pull on that thread today and help you to understand actually what's going on. In my view, this is the biggest story in American politics ever in history. And I want you to get across that so you've got some opinions about that and you need to formulate these opinions. I just want to close out that little thought bubble there by saying that you've got to formulate opinions about these things. You've got to pay attention to these things. It's really, really, really important that you pay attention to it, folks, because you're in the silent majority. If you're not saying, if you're watching my content, if you're tuning in to Ed and I here on The Unspoken Truth, the chances are that you are in the silent majority. You're not on the left. You don't believe in all this leftist bullshit that's out there, all this vaccination rubbish, all the lies that came with that. You don't believe in all this climate change garbage and the lies that they're perpetuating there as well. The chances are you've got a bit more of a center right or maybe even a right-leaning view of the world, and your thoughts are in that space. But the problem is, when you are on the right, people on the right are usually the silent majority. We just kind of shrug our shoulders at these idiots on the left and we just let it go. We just let that happen. We just accept what it is that they're saying to us. And we can't do that anymore, folks. We can't. We've got to speak up. We've got to speak out. We've got to say something about the unspoken truth. All right. If this is your first time here at the show, welcome. I want to say thank you for joining me. Thanks for tuning in and having a look at what I've got going on here. And if you're back for more, welcome back. Thank you so much for your support. I really appreciate the comments that you've got there. There's a couple of people joining us live here on the show as well. I can see CPR. Hi, Rob. Good day. I'm saying the majority are starting to wake up. I agree. The majority are definitely starting to wake up there. So just let us know your thoughts in the comments as well, and I'll go through them as I go here because Ed's not here with me today, so I'll interact with you guys directly as well. We did a story, CP, yesterday on Gary Gensler of the SEC. He is like one of the most corrupt politicians in American history, out there playing whack-a-mole with the crypto exchanges, trying to shut down these exchanges, trying to sue them. But then it's come out that he used Coinbase, so he's trying to shut down Coinbase. He used Coinbase to short Bitcoin. Like, my head is going to explode with this bullshit that's going on at the SEC. So Gary Gensler is definitely one of those deep state operatives that's very, very corrupt. Folks, we're available also as a podcast, so make sure you pop on and open your favorite podcasting app, whether that's Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or something else, and you'll be able to get yourself some unspoken truth. So please subscribe on the podcast as well. We're getting a little bit of momentum there. I mentioned yesterday on the show that we're now in the top 200 for the unspoken truth for daily news, and I can see that getting a little bit more momentum as we go. And I can't do that without you folks, and I really appreciate your help. So thank you for your ongoing support there. We're over on Twitter, of course, and also on Telegram. Please come over to Telegram because I share a whole bunch of stuff that I can't share over here on this self-censoring platform. That's just the nature of this beast. If I want to play ball with this the platform, I've got to kind of self-censor a little bit. And over on Telegram, there's no censorship whatsoever. Just be careful, folks. It comes with a warning if you're going to join me on Telegram over there. There's a bunch of war crimes in there. I cover that up. But if you just click on to those videos and it clicks off the little black and white spinny thing that's on the front of it there, just be careful because you can't unsee some of the things that are in there. The reason I put that in there is because I want you to see the unspoken truth of what's going on in the war in Ukraine. When you see those Ukrainian war crimes, you'll lose support for them pretty quickly. When you see the Russian war crimes, you'll lose support for them as well. And it'll make you question everything about what's going on in the narrative, how the evil Russians are invading and the tough Ukrainians are fighting back. And you see all of this stuff and I just go, man, the whole thing is just a ruse. What we're doing is we're supplying them weapons to kill each other, and we're perpetuating that killing. We're perpetuating those war crimes, and it just needs to stop. All of them need to stop. It's just Donald Trump was right when he said that. The killing just needs to stop. War is a complete and total failure of humanity, folks. And over there on the Telegram channel, I promise you, if you click on one or two of those videos that are covered up, you'll see in about 20 seconds what a failure, what an absolute failure of humanity war actually is. So please head on over to Telegram. The link's in the description and join me over there as well. All right. Thank you so much for joining us. The 7 or 8 people joining on the live here as I kick this off. I'm going to start off with a video. Let me just fix my settings here. I'm going to start off with a video from the senator talking about what's actually going on with this thing called a 1023. So the 1023 is the document given to them by the FBI. And this will catch up really quickly. So I'll bring you into these videos. So let's have a look. And this is really the genesis of this story today. So we're looking at the Biden family corruption and how it's all coming out. And just take a listen to the evidence that they now have.
Who allegedly bribed Joe and Hunter Biden allegedly has audio recordings of his conversation with them. 17 such recordings. According to the 1023, the foreign national possesses 15 audio recordings of phone calls between him and Hunter Biden. According to the 1023, the foreign national possesses 2 audio recordings of phone calls between him and then Vice President Joe Biden. These recordings were allegedly kept as a sort of insurance policy for the foreign national in case that he got into a tight spot. The 1023 also indicates that then Vice President Joe Biden may have been involved in Burisma employing Hunter Biden. Based on the facts known to the Congress and the public, it's clear that the Justice Department, the FBI, haven't nearly had the same laser focus on the Biden family.
So it's all coming out, folks. All of this is starting to come to a head, and there's a whole lot of information that the FBI have that they just simply haven't released. And it goes to the very heart of, why do you care? Well, why do we give a shit about any of this stuff? Well, I'm just going to keep coming back to it, folks. The reason it matters is because it's rules for thee and rules for me. They make up whatever rules that they want when it suits them at the time that it suits them. If you ever find yourself in any type of trouble with the law, they'll come down on you like a ton of bricks. If you ever find yourself in front of a magistrate in court, or you're in front of a judge for whatever reason, for whatever crime that you've committed, they're going to come down on you like a ton of bricks, and they'll throw the entire book at you, and they'll do everything humanly possible to put you away and to find you guilty of a crime, irrespective of whether or not you're innocent. They'll do everything to actually throw the book at you. And here what we're just seeing something completely different. We're seeing something, the way that Hunter Biden has been treated. That, you know, there was he applied for a gun license, and on the form, he said that he'd never committed a felony. But then at the time he applied for the gun license, there was photos from his laptop that have now come out. The time, a couple of days before and a couple of days after, he's using illegal drugs. So that is considered a felony in the United States. So he lied on that form. And when you lie on that application form, that's also a felony. So he technically should have been arrested for that. And the FBI have that information, but Hunter Biden's not under arrest. And my view is that the guy is just an instrument of the deep state. He's just a tool that's been used by the CIA, and he's a tool that's been used by the FBI. And that has been to their end. And that's the reason why he's untouchable. So just moving on from what was said there in Congress, and the evidence has now come out. That 1023 form is stating exactly what's going on. We also have an eyewitness, and the eyewitness is willing to put his hand up and testify under oath that he's ready to go. And he's actually put himself forward and gone forward to the FBI and said, "Oi, I was there, I saw this, here's the evidence." He went and gave the evidence. But once again, from the FBI, complete radio silence. Remember, it's rules for me and rules for thee. And that's what's actually happening here. And let's take a look at this eyewitness and see what he has to say.
Joe Biden was not president. Barack Obama was president. If you're going to hold up $1 billion in aid, Barack Obama has to know a little bit about it. Can you shed some light into what Obama's culpability in all of this might be?
You know, Obama knew all about it. Obama was covering it up from the start. So I'll move back another segment of time. We'll go back to the beginning of Joe's tenure as this, I'm going to do Ukraine and rescue Ukraine. So that process starts shortly after, actually. Hunter Biden gets $3.5 million from Yelena Baturina on February 14th, Valentine's Day in 2014. There's these huge protests on the Maidan Square there in downtown Kyiv. And all of a sudden, Hunter gets this money from this ally of Vladimir Putin. What happens a few days later? Snipers start killing people in Maidan. Biden gets on the phone with the then president of Ukraine, and he says, "You got to get out of there. We're coming for you in the world court. You know, you're going to get prosecuted for war crimes." So the guy flees. He runs back to Russia. And then 2 weeks later, Vladimir Putin invades Crimea and takes it over with his, Green Men military invasion. That's when Joe Biden has to become the rescuer of Ukraine. Very soon after that, he goes to Poland. At the time, the former president of Poland was already on the board of Burisma, and he was a very good friend of Joe Biden. His name was Alexander Kwasniewski. He worked here in D.C. for a while, teaching a course at Georgetown. Hunter Biden in 2014 at this time was teaching a course at Georgetown. Joe Biden was very tied into Georgetown University.
Folks, I just want to interject in there for a second because I want to remind you that all of this was apparently Russian disinformation. And people during the election when Trump was elected, there was all, Russia, 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 all of this hoax, all of this garbage that's coming out there. And all it was is it showed that the mainstream media was an instrument of the deep state. And if you really just pull on the thread just a little bit, if you just look for the unspoken truth just a little bit, you'll find that it's actually true. And there's just so many people out there that are just taking a cursory glance at these things and think, doesn't matter. What do I care? It doesn't affect me. It doesn't matter. But it does affect you because it changes the way that our society works. It changes the foundation and the things that matter to us as individuals. What happens in American politics doesn't affect me here in Sydney, Australia at all, one little bit, not one iota. But it's reflective in our politicians when they get away with these things. It's reflective when our politicians get up and lie and get away with it. And we've had that in the last week with a series of politicians lying about a rape case that was weaponized here in Australia. Let me say that again. A rape case has been weaponized here in Australia, and Australian politicians were lying, and they lied to turn the court of public opinion against ScoMo, the sitting Prime Minister, to get him to lose the election, to make him look like a bad dude. They lied about something as serious as that. So when you see all these things and you think, it's just another bullshit conspiracy, tinfoil hat thing, some Alex Jones craziness, it's not. It's real. And if you listen to the detail in what this fellow's saying, you'll see very, very quickly that he's speaking the unspoken truth, and you just can't unhear the truth, folks.
So Kwasniewski, Biden goes to Poland. Kwasniewski's on the board. He's in Poland talking about we want to rescue Ukraine. We have to give them energy security. A couple of weeks later, there's emails. Hunter Biden has gone to Lake Como in Italy. He's met with Burisma executives. Then he comes back, does a meeting at his dad's residence, the Naval Observatory, on April 8th, 2014. And that's just before Joe is due to go to Ukraine. And then April 16th, 2014 is when Hunter and Devon Archer go into Joe's West Wing office. There's emails stating, I want to be there. There's a calendar entry where I'm meeting Devon and Lukey, his young son, Devon Archer's son, who was the cover story. The cover story was Luke Archer's doing a book report. He wants to meet with Vice President Biden. That's the cover story. So they let him in. He goes in. As he's in the White House visitor logs, that's legitimate. At 11:18 on that day, he goes in. Hunter Biden's a family member. He gets facial recognition to go in. The guards see him. They know who he is. They just buzz him in. He never shows up in the visitor logs. So he's standing behind the camera in the background during this meeting. These guys walk out of this meeting, and they start emailing their friends and their fellow investors. We're meeting with Burisma. We're meeting with other people about another company they did a scam with called Metabiota. That's April 16th, 2014. That night, Biden and...
Oops, I was muted there. Sorry. Folks, I just wanted to interject there. You might have heard the name of the company, Metabiota. And if you haven't heard that before, if this is the first time that you're hearing this, if this is the first time that you've heard Metabiota, I want you to pay very, very close attention to what this guy is saying and to what he's got to say about that. I want to also acknowledge the Benny Show. I forgot to grab the link. I do have the link. I forgot to grab it, but after this live recording, I'll put that link down below in the description. So make sure you check out that show and this interview as well, because he's awesome, this dude. So listen to what he says about Metabiota. It's gobsmacking. I just almost can't believe it.
And Joe Biden and Barack Obama are in Barack Obama's limousine together in Western Pennsylvania. They did an event together in Western Pennsylvania, and rode back from the event to the airport. There's a White House picture of both those guys standing outside of the limousine with their airplanes in the background, 2 airplanes on the tarmac, 2 guys standing by, and there's 2 limousines in the picture. But there's a selfie of Joe Biden in Barack Obama's limousine that he took that day. He's like, I'm riding the limousine with Barack Obama. So that's out there. So he was in that limousine. What were they talking about? Were they talking about Ukraine? Were they talking about golf and grandkids? They were talking about Burisma. They were talking about why was Hunter in the office today. They were talking about what's this thing with Metabiota. Metabiota, by the way, is the company that set up the bio labs in Ukraine. That was another scam that Joe and Hunter were running concurrent with Burisma.
So you would recall it was probably at the start of this year that there was biolabs in Ukraine. You know, the Russian foreign minister or whoever she was came out and said that there was biolabs there. The Americans were funding it. They were doing that. And the Americans were like, what on earth are you talking about? And you probably heard that the same as me and thought, bullshit. It's just Russian disinformation. It's just Russian propaganda, Russian garbage. But it turns out that it's actually true. And it turns out that Joe and Hunter Biden are behind it all. Like, what on earth is going on? And I'm not just taking this guy's word for it. There's now documented evidence about that. And the documented evidence, I'd have to dig all of that out and stuff. But I've seen it, and I've had a look at it myself. It's actually true. This is actually true, what this fellow's say.
That's the 16th. On April 18th, 2 days later, Hunter Biden goes to New York. He's on the show, Morning Joe's, with Joe Scarborough and Mika Brzezinski. And what does he do? He's talking about his other job, World Food Program. I'm a great guy. I'm a great guy. After that, he signs up to be on Burisma board. He used them as their cover story. They're his dupes. Those are the dupes of the Biden crime family. Morning Joe, don't believe a word they ever say. They're dupes. If they're lucky, they're dupes. If they're not lucky, they're in on it. So that's the 18th. The 21st, I'm on a plane flying into Ukraine. This is my first flight into Ukraine with Joe Biden. Joe knows at this point that Hunter Biden is on the board. No one else knows. There's media on the plane. My job as a stenographer is to sit in the back of the plane. Who comes walking back? Jake Sullivan. He has to do a briefing as a senior administration official. I'm there recording him. The press asks, what is this energy assistance you're bringing for Ukraine? He names 4 things. 2 of them specifically relate to Burisma. One is this thing called MERP, Municipal Energy Reform Program. That's money that goes out of the USAID directly to Burisma. That's him giving.
So in case you missed it there, folks, it's money coming straight from USAID. USAID is talking about being paid directly to Burisma. And Hunter Biden is sitting on the board of Burisma, getting paid $80,000 a month or whatever he was getting paid. And how do you think he's getting paid? And where did the funding come from? So Joe Biden gave him all of that funding. Hunter's sitting there on the board getting paid, and the money's coming from USAID. So essentially, Joe is getting his son paid that way. So if you think that's not a pay-to-play scam, I don't know what the definition of it would be.
Giving them a kickback scheme. And they don't know it. They don't know that Hunter's already on the board. And then he talks about we're bringing substantial assistance for their non-conventional gas reserves. That's what Burisma was specialties on. It's fracking. They're a fracker. They're a fracking company. They're the biggest fracking operation in Ukraine, private natural gas. So both these things are going directly into Burisma's pocket from American taxpayers. Jake Sullivan says that as directed by Joe Biden, right in the front of the plane. I told this to the FBI in February, just a few months ago. Did a witness statement. FBI, I'm a witness. Here's the crime. It's public corruption. Have not heard back. I took that information and I put it together with other information and sent it to the grand jury, the U.S. Attorney David Weiss in Delaware. David Weiss, U.S. Attorney guy, I should be a witness in front of your grand jury, and have not heard back. They don't want me to be a witness in their grand jury because when I'm a witness in their grand jury, that becomes evidence. And so right now, Congresswoman Boebert has the evidence in these documents. I have the evidence as an eyewitness. I will testify under oath anywhere of what I've just told you.
Well, there you have it, folks. There's the eyewitness statement. We've got the 1023 document from the FBI, and we've got an eyewitness, and the FBI is still refusing to do anything about it. And that's why I say you should care about these things, because when you present evidence, you would expect that something would be done about it. If you saw a crime that was happening in your neighborhood, if you saw something that was going on, if you knew that there was some sort of corporate espionage happening within the business that you worked on, would you actually put your hand up and speak up? Well, we've all been trained and coached in the day and age of terrorism that if you see something, you should say something. But here in reality, this guy has seen something that is deeply corrupt. He's put his hand up and said, "Oh, I've got the evidence there. I was an eyewitness. So I've got the timelines. I've got the details. I know exactly what was happening. I've documented every single thing that's gone on there." And you could probably corroborate what he's saying with other people that were there at the same time, because he's a member of the media scrum. Then here's the details, but they haven't done anything with it. They've just sat on it. It's the same as the Hunter Biden laptop that was handed over. The guy who had that in his computer shop cloned it, kept a copy for himself, handed a copy off to the FBI and another copy to Giuliani, the New York mayor at the time, and then nothing was done. They sat on the evidence. They didn't do anything with it. And once again, rules for thee and rules for me. And it shows you how fake the deep state is. And it's always been there, folks. It's just these things bring it to the surface. It's always been just under the surface, and now it's popping up for all of us to see and to witness here in plain sight. All right, before I throw to the next part of this report here, I've got some pretty cool, they go at this FBI guy pretty hard in Congress, so I'm going to show you that in a sec. But before I do that, I just want to remind you that today's show is brought to you by you. In this crazy, uncertain world, we all need a way to protect and insulate ourselves from the outside forces that we simply cannot control. I'm a news junkie, and after a lifetime of constantly immersing myself in the darkness and the despair that engulfs the world, the path to shield myself and my family has become crystal clear. I want to invite you to come and join me in the Unspoken Truth community, where I'll show you how I protect my family from this crazy world. You'll get access to 3 masterclasses worth over $1,000, as well as our live events, training, and community of truthers just like you. Come on over to the unspokentruth.com.au and join us for just 50 cents a day. What are you waiting for? Get started now at the unspokentruth.com.au. Well, Speakeasy says there in the comments, he says it's all a matrix of control, and it is indeed. I don't know if you saw the Andrew Tate interview with Patrick Bet-David yesterday. It was like 4 hours or something long. It's like really super long. I watched the whole thing. I watched it at 2-speed, right? So it doesn't take as long. Watched about half of it on my morning walk, and watched it in the evening when I was chilling out as well. So it's a really good interview, and it kind of shows exactly, he talks about the Matrix all the time, and he shows how the Matrix is attacking him and what they're actually doing and how they try and discredit him as well. And you can see how the Matrix is covering everything up here with this Joe Biden thing as well, which is it's just really super, super alarming. So we've got the 1023, which is the FBI document, saying that there's voice recordings. So where are the voice recordings? That's the next thing that's going to come out. And that's why I say this is the biggest story in American politics and maybe in Western politics ever, because we all know this corruption is going on. We all know this cronyism is going on. We all know the horse trading that goes on in politics is happening. We know that. We all know that. We intrinsically know that that's actually happening, but we just don't have the evidence. And the evidence, if it's there, it's been repressed, but now the evidence is coming out and it's on the public record. So that in my view, is a really, really super important thing. So the next part of this is you'll see very quickly how the FBI are refusing to cooperate. So let's take a little listen to this. And I love how these guys go after these bureaucrats who think they have more power than anybody else and they think they're in charge. This guy, I think he knows the game is up. Just have a look at his body language, which I really like looking at. The game is up for this guy.
You just started to answer Senator Blackburn's question that not releasing the 1023 or talking about it as a matter of life and death, question of life and death, you said. Explain.
It is potentially a question of life and death
For whom?
with regard to the source of the information.
So, okay, so now we've confirmed that the document exists. That's progress because the FBI director initially denied that it exists. Why did he do that?
We have already and previously acknowledged the existence of the documents.
Yeah, after you first denied it. Now, when a member of this committee read it, right, the FBI director, let's just get the record straight. The FBI director initially said it doesn't exist. Then Senator Grassley said, I've read it. Then he said, oh, okay, well, gotcha. I guess it does exist. Now you're going back and forth with members of this committee, what's in it. Why don't you just release it? Is it classified?
The document is not classified.
Okay. Will you commit to releasing it?
Senator, we'll take that back and we will work with you in this committee.
How about just a yes or no? Will you commit to releasing this unclassified document that alleges that the President of the United States, has taken $5 million or more in bribes from a foreign nation?
That right there, folks. I watched this video a couple of times, right? Make sure I got the right content to share with everybody and make sure I got my facts straight and everything like that. But that's the reason that this is the biggest story in the history of Western politics. Like I said, we all know that this is going on. We all know it. We all know that politics is deeply corrupt. We all know that Nancy Pelosi is a deeply corrupted politician. We all know that Australian politicians lie and British ones do too. And it doesn't matter what country in the world you are, they pretend that in light of new information, I've changed my mind or something's different. But the reality is they're just lying to you. They lie. And here we are on the precipice of a discovery. You know, in some ways, I actually hope it's not true. In many ways, I hope that Joe Biden didn't do any of this because I want to live in a system where there's a rule of law. I want to live in a system where normal people like me and like you and constituents like us can trust our agencies. You can go to the police and you can hand them some information and they'll do something about it. And if they can't do anything about it, they'll get back to you and say, sorry, Rob, I can't do anything about that. We don't have enough to actually pursue it, but here are some alternative things that you could actually do. But the reality is the police are not even doing that here. The FBI are definitely not doing that here. And that's why this is the biggest story in political history ever.
The document has already been released pursuant to a subpoena to the House Oversight Committee.
Has it been released to this committee?
We will work with this committee within the parameters that are established to meet
Will you release the
request.
document to the public? It's unclassified. Don't you think the American people have a right to see it?
So the reason that they're not going to release it to the public is because they say that the whistleblower, the person who's come forward and said that, hey, I've got 17 recordings of this and here's all the information about it, is because this FBI guy says, oh, his safety would be at risk and we're there to protect the person's safety. We're going to keep him safe. Yeah, sure, that's what the cops are meant to do, right? They're meant to keep you safe. They're meant to keep all of us safe. That's definitely what they're meant to do. But we're not talking, we're talking about like white collar crime here. We're not talking about drug dealers shooting each other's dead in the street or something like that. It seems very, very strange. And even if that was the case, it can be redacted, right? And listen, he actually says that.
Senator, the document, as you know, contains sensitive information that has bearing on the life of the source of the information, potentially.
You can redact the source's name. We do this all the time.
In some instances, Senator, and I know you know this, that is not sufficient to protect people. And that's what we strive and work to do each and every day. And I hope you would take that seriously, too.
Oh, I take it very seriously. But I also take seriously the fact that your institution has repeatedly abused its authority.
All right, so that's the end of that video. I've just got one more to share with you and to catch you up, and I think we're beating a dead horse. You see where this is actually going, but I couldn't not show you the next video with Ted Cruz in it. It's actually really funny. You probably know, you may not know, that Ted Cruz used to be a prosecutor, and he's got a really good podcast as well. And they go into great detail on this Biden family corruption on his podcast. I think he's had like 60 million downloads or something like that. So if you haven't heard of that before, the reason I'm telling you that is because you're probably sitting in the silent majority. Why would an Aussie like me sitting in Sydney, Australia, care about the Biden family corruption? Well, it's a juicy story. That's the first thing, right? And it's really interesting. But it's also really interesting to figure out actually how this game is played and what goes on there. So once again, I'll find that link for Ted's podcast and I'll put that down below. It's called The Verdict. is the show. He does it, I think he does it like 2 or 3 times a week. It's really worth tuning into. Whether you like Ted Cruz or not, you'll get it from the prosecutor's angle. And it's really quite interesting hearing it from his angle and the way that he kind of carries himself and the way that he communicates. There's a lot to learn from his communication style and the way he speaks. Whether you like the guy or not, he's actually a really good communicator, and it's worthwhile tuning in for that. Let's take a listen to what Ted Cruz says. He gets pretty fired up here, and he'll bring it home for us here.
A whistleblower brought to light the existence in the FBI of a report, an FD 1023, in which the informant alleges that President Biden and his family members engaged in a $5 million bribery scheme during his time as vice president. Deputy Director Abate, is it true that the FBI has a report making those allegations?
I'm not going to comment on that, Senator.
And why is that?
I'm just not going to comment on information we received, investigations, or
Do you owe an
ongoing matters.
obligation to the American people to be candid about evidence of corruption by the President of the United States?
This is an area that I'm not going to get into with you, Senator.
Well, I understand you don't want to, and that's why people are mad at the FBI, because you're stonewalling and covering up serious allegations of evidence of corruption from the president. Yesterday, Senator Chuck Grassley stood on the Senate floor and alleged that there are 17 recordings of this informant from Burisma, Ukrainian natural gas company. 15 of them are recordings, voice recordings of him talking to Hunter Biden. 2 of them are voice recordings of him talking to Joe Biden. Deputy Director Abate, does the FBI have 17 voice recordings laying out evidence of a bribery scheme?
Senator, I would add also that we've worked with the House Oversight Committee.
Yeah, this is the
provide
Senate. We're the other
document
side of the Capitol. This is the Senate. Do you have those 17 recordings?
I'm not going to comment on any investigative matters, Senator.
See, that's the problem. The FBI, and I've had this conversation with Chris Wray too, this is why you are damaging the institution. The American people have a right to know whether there is serious, credible evidence that the President of the United States took a $5 million bribe. And by the way, if it's false, Chairman Durbin just rolled his eyes. If Chairman Durbin were interested in the rule of law, we would have a hearing on these allegations. But of course, the Democrats don't want a hearing on these allegations. And to be clear, if the allegations are false, you know who could disprove them? Joe Biden.
Right there, folks, is the solution to all of this deep state madness and all this bullshit. If it wasn't true, then just come out and say, it's not true. I didn't do that. I never took a bribe. I never did that. I never got my son into a position. Or if it was true, come out and actually defend your position and say exactly why you did it. The silence that they go through here and them being quiet about all of this is actually more damaging to them than actually coming out on one side or the other. It doesn't really matter which side that they come out. But like I said before, I really hope that none of this is true. I really hope that what Ted said there is true, that if the guy is innocent, and he's innocent until he's proven guilty, this is trial by media. And trial by media leads you to the point where I'm at today. You know, I'm part of the quasi, B-grade media out there as independent reporting saying that this is actually true. Here's the evidence. Here's how it's corroborated, and here's what's actually happening. And I'm reporting on what other people are saying. But is it true? Is it really true? Well, we never know unless we get to a hearing, unless we get these people under oath. And what the Republicans are doing here, people like Ted Cruz and others, what they're trying to do is they're trying to find the evidence to say, ha, gotcha, see? But then when they find the evidence, go, aha, gotcha, someone will come out and say, that's a deep fake. I could fake that. That wouldn't be true. How are you going to corroborate the evidence? How are you doing these things? And so what they're trying to do is to triangulate everything. Here's an eyewitness. Here's this evidence. Here's that evidence. They're trying to put it all together to make it all happen. But it's trial by media. If the Republicans were really smart about it, my view is what they would do is do it all of it behind closed doors. So they're not just giving us a little bit here and a little bit there, and they're teasing us with this and they're teasing us with that. Because if they make mistakes along the way, if Ted Cruz is making an accusation here and he's making a mistake there, it's very hard for him to retract that because it's now on the public record, and then the deep state mainstream media will just push that, constantly saying, look, he lied. So they're better off doing this behind closed doors, getting all of the evidence, putting everything together, and then bringing it out all at once with the indictment and doing it properly. At least that's my view. I'd love to know what your view is.
He could call for this to be released publicly. But the FBI is stonewalling. Would you agree?
Two things, Senator. No
Sure.
one's stonewalling. The 1023
You just said you refused to answer the
was provided
question.
in response to a subpoena.
Okay,
to the
then why'd
House
you refuse
Oversight
to answer
Committee.
my
The-
question?
The pertinent information is there, and I reject your assertion that the
Why
FBI
did you
is
refuse to answer my
politicized.
question?
I just answered your question.
Okay, so yes, you have a 1023. Do you have the 17 recordings? Yes or no?
I'm not going to get further into that.
So you're
Senator.
stonewalling.
He's not going to get into whether or not he has the recordings. See, so Ted's saying, now you're stonewalling, now you're stonewalling. You don't know if he's got it or he doesn't. So this is the problem right there, is what I'm saying, is that if they go away and they actually don't have those recordings, and then Ted Cruz is going, he's going at him, going, show me the recordings, and the other guy before him, show me, but it's actually not there, then that makes him look like an idiot. Why don't you actually just wait until you get hold of those recordings and use your leverage and let the system do its thing, so you get those recordings, put it all together, verify it all, make sure it's all legit and it's real, and then move forward with it. So I think they're making a lot of mistakes here in real time, and not a lot of people can see this. And the problem is that most people don't tune into shows like this. They don't tune into the unspoken truth. And, you know, this video comes from a 2-minute clip on Twitter. You know, I'll pull the clip out of Twitter, and just think of somebody's user behavior as they're scrolling through their feed in Twitter. And they're like, oh, there's Ted Cruz. You watch it, your attention span is short because it's a 5-minute video. You're watching that video on Twitter for 90 seconds going, he's going at him. The FBI is not cooperating. They're not doing anything like that. And that's the only soundbite that you get of it. And that's why I'm saying, folks, that's why it's so important that you tune in to actually what's happening in the media, because the sound bites that you get 1 minute at a time in an Instagram reel, in a YouTube short, in a short Twitter video, in a TikTok video, those short little sound bites that you get are not enough to help you to make an informed decision about these things. And all of this change that we need in our society, all of this leftist bullshit, this leftist garbage and this leftist collectivism that we're seeing come and being perpetrated into our society needs to be destroyed from the grassroots level, from our level. It's not going to come from the top down. It's going to come from the bottom up. When all of us in the silent majority look at all of this and we see all of this and we go, you know, this is complete garbage. I did a podcast just a couple of days ago where we were talking about what does it mean to be a man. And right at the end of the show, I started where we finished with my 3 guests, and they were all like really wishy-washy about what they said. And I said to them, you know, you've got to take a stand. What it means for me to be a man is you need to, there's never been a time in human history where it's more important to be a man and have masculine qualities, where you're big, you're tough, you're strong, you're loud, you're out there, you're going for it. Because if the government comes along and says, hey, we're going to war with China, and here's conscription, you've got to go to the front. And no matter whether you're on the left, you're on the right, you're a feminine, girly man, or you're a blokey bloke, you're going to the front. And what I can say to you from being in the military is that if you are on the front, you will not survive if you're a feminine, girly man. So all of these things that are happening in society, our society has been systematically eroded and destroyed by the left, by the idiots at the universities introducing these communist socialist ideologies, trying to split our families, to try and destroy the nuclear family, and it's coming from the ground up with this leftist ideology. The only way that we're going to fight that is if we fight it from the ground up with better Christian family values. I'm not a religious person, but those Christian family values are the fundamental piece of our society that's held our society together for the last 500 years. And the left have systematically destroyed that nuclear family, and they're destroying your ability and your opportunity to actually get in there and make a difference in the lives of your kids, because your kids are subjected to more social media than they are to you as a parent, as an individual. And if in order for this to actually take hold, folks, this is why you need to pay attention to this stuff, is it's only going to work from the grassroots up. It's never going to come from the top down. Donald Trump's not going to solve the problem here. A new Prime Minister in Australia is not going to solve the problem here. The only thing that's going to solve these problems is if we collectively fight back against this leftist bullshit and this type of rules for thee and rules for me ideology that we're seeing here in this video.
You can't say I'm not refusing to answer your question, but I won't answer your question.
I'm going to answer within the parameters that we operate in.
That's the problem. The FBI has right now an unlimited hubris that you believe you are unaccountable. You don't believe you're accountable to the United States Congress, and you don't believe you're accountable to the American people. And you are doing damage. The FBI is a great institution. When I go home to Texas, people ask me, should we abolish the FBI? Now, I tell them no, because you have heroes and patriots working for you that are catching child predators, that are catching terrorists. But you're sitting there happily erecting a wall to protect Joe Biden. Will you provide to this committee, not the House, the Senate Judiciary Committee, will you provide the FD 1023 and will you provide the 17 recordings so we can assess what is the evidence, the specific credible evidence that Joe Biden personally took a $5 million bribe from a foreign national?
So what do you think, folks? Do you think that's a ruse? Because he could have just got on the phone and went, oi, can you provide that? Like, speak like a normal person. You know, you don't have to publicly berate somebody. The guy, Ted's the senator. He's the guy in charge. He's the one with the power, right? The FBI dude, he's just a bureaucrat. He's the guy at the top of the food chain over there, and he answers to Ted. Ted's his boss. Why wouldn't he just ring him up and go, hey, man, can you provide that 1023 for me and get me those recordings and get that across to me? And the guy goes, no, we don't comment on ongoing investigations. Listen, man, you have to do that because of these reasons, and then just do it behind closed doors. So do you think, I don't know, do you think that this is a strategy that the Republicans are using to do this out in the open, to berate these FBI bureaucrats, to try and get the American public on their side? It seems like a little bit of a bigger and a wider strategy. I could be reading too much into it. I don't know. Let me know what you think in the comments.
Senator, we will work with this committee, you and other members, to provide the information within the parameters of the process.
Will you provide the FD 1023, yes or no?
So he just said he would work with you. I'll work with you to the limits of what I can actually do. I can only do what I can do within the boundaries of my system and what I can do. But Ted keeps pushing him. Watch.
I will take that back and we will work with our
So you're not
chambers.
answering that. Will you provide the 17 recordings?
We will take that back and we'll work with you.
So
and
you're
your
not
staff.
answering that either. Did you investigate in any way, shape, or form these allegations?
Senator, once again, I'm not going to comment.
So
on
you're not going to say
investigative-
whether you did your job?
We do our job to the very best of our ability.
Well, not here. You're not answering a single question to the American people. And you may think this is esoteric. I promise you, millions of Americans are concerned. You know who isn't concerned? Not a single Senate Democrat. We're going to go through this whole hearing. Not one Democrat will ask a question about this. You know who else isn't concerned? The corporate media, who is joining with the Democrats in covering up this evidence. If Joe Biden is innocent, the evidence should be made public and demonstrate that he's innocent. But if he is not, is it true this informant who alleged that he personally took a bribe was an informant the FBI had relied upon previously in other investigations? Yes or no?
In each and every investigation that we have, all the work that we do,
I asked you
the
yes or no
expectation
question.
is that every logical avenue investigation be pursued.
I asked you a
to
yes.
I'm laughing, folks. What I call that is corporate doublespeak, yeah? And this is corporate government bureaucracy doublespeak. He's like he's meandering around the yes or no question, and the prosecutor's saying yes or no, and then he's talking like that, and Ted's just going to say, well, you're just refusing to answer the question, aren't you? And I seriously wonder, you give this guy the benefit of the doubt just for a second. He doesn't want to come in front of a committee like this. This is the very last thing that this guy ever wants to do in his job. He doesn't want to do this. He doesn't get an ounce or a nanosecond of enjoyment out of this. He's the person being selected to sit in front of that microphone, to press that button and try and dodge every single difficult question that's being given to him. So you give him the benefit of the doubt, and maybe, just maybe, there's some element of truth in what's going on there. I don't know. If I try to see the good in people, and I try and see that happening there, but I could be completely and totally wrong. I suspect that I am, and I suspect that he is just stonewalling in there, but I also think it's funny listening to his corporate bureaucratic doublespeak.
Yes or no
Fullest.
question. Are you going to answer it?
Yeah, I'm answering your question.
Was the informant one you had relied on previously in other investigations? Yes or no?
Senator, we run down every piece of information. Every
You're not
lead,
answering it then. You're refusing to answer
objectively,
it. So you're refusing to answer the
to
question.
the fullest extent possible.
refusing to answer the
relentlessly
question.
and
Is that correct?
aggressively in all
Expired.
instances.
Senator, your
It's
time is
disgraceful. It's disgraceful, Deputy Director Abate. Disgraceful. last month.
See, I wonder if that last little bit there where he says, oh, that's disgraceful, Deputy Director. Is that whole thing, that whole stage play a ruse? And that ruse to actually get these people to do something publicly because you can't get them to do it behind closed doors. But I suspect if you got on the phone and spoke to that guy, he would have given you the same answers because he's only able to operate within the boundaries of the system that he's operating within. And then he's got a boss who's saying, no, you can't do that. No, you can't release that information. No, you can't do that. It's an ongoing investigation, but they're not really investigating in the background. But if they are investigating in the background, you don't know that. And Ted Cruz is going to look like an idiot when he comes out and they say, yes, we've been investigating. Here's the evidence. He's guilty. And Ted Cruz is going to go, aha, see? And they go through all of this bullshit, all of this theatre, this political theatre for no reason. If you think, folks, that the political theatre exists because these people care about the United States and they care about their constituents, just be careful not to be drawn into that patriotic stuff as well, because I'm not even entirely sure that that's true. Ted Cruz genuinely seems pissed off there, and he genuinely seems like he actually cares. But that doesn't necessarily mean he cares about you. When was the last time, if you're in America and you're from Texas, when was the last time you ever saw Ted Cruz? You know, in my local electorate here, the federal member is Scott Morrison, the former Prime Minister of Australia. When was the last time I ever saw Scott Morrison here in this electorate? Well, probably about 5 years ago, before COVID. It's the only time, and he's been the federal member for Cook here for like forever, for years, for a very long time. And I've seen the guy one single time in this whole entire constituency. And this is, I'm not talking about the state of Texas, which is like enormous. It's half the size of freaking New South Wales or whatever. It's a big state. But here in the Sutherland Shire where I live, it's maybe 20 suburbs. And where is Scott Morrison? Where is the federal member? Where is the local member, by the way? And where is the state member? Why don't I see these politicians? I don't see these politicians walking around the local shops up in Miranda Fair or Cronulla Mall or anything like that. These local politicians are not plugged in to the constituency. They're not. That's just a fact. Ted Cruz is not plugged into his constituency any more than my local members are here in Australia. It's all bullshit. They get elected by the constituency because we have to pick someone. And here in Australia, voting is compulsory. So you have to pick somebody. So we pick that person who seems the least worst choice of all. And I voted against Scott Morrison because anything could be better than Scott Morrison. And how on earth did the guy get re-elected after all of that chaos that he caused during COVID? Oh my God, who actually knows? Really? The mainstream media have got somebody to that point. Look, what I'm trying to say, folks, is that it doesn't matter who the politicians are. The chances of them listening to what you've got to say and doing something about what you've got to say are almost zero. I suspect Ted Cruz is really pissed off at the whole entire system, that it's rules for thee and then rules for me, because Donald Trump is being indicted for all of these bullshit charges over here, but Joe Biden gets it away with it over there. And his sense of morality and justice as a prosecutor and as a lawyer is such that he's got to do something about it. Right, so he's not doing something about it because of his constituents, although he would say that, yeah, that's part of it and that's what he's doing. I suspect that he's doing that because of his own sense of morality and justice and rules for thee and rules for me type thing as well. So just be careful you don't get drawn into all of that as well. That's the deep state and the Republican version of the deep state drawing you in to make you feel a certain way, to get you to feel outrage against the enemy, who are the Democrats, because they just care about being re-elected. That's what they care about. At the end of the day, when you boil all of this bullshit down and you make all of this bullshit political scandal go away, what they care about is their own self-interest. And if they weren't caring about their own self-interest, I would say that they're not humans. You know, being in government, I worked in government. Being in government is being of service to the people that you're there for. That's why people thank you for your service, because you're being of service to somebody else, to the greater good, to the greater collective of what's out there. And politicians have these high and mighty ideals that they're going to change the world when they get in there. They're going to do all of these things. But the reality is that they're a tiny cog in a giant machine, and they can't really change the world. They can't really make a giant difference. So just be careful that you don't get drawn in to the Republican version of the deep state there, like Ted Cruz and that other fella, by them fighting for you. They're not fighting for you, folks. They're not. They're fighting for their party and they're fighting for themselves, because when they fight for the party and they fight for themselves, they secure their position. whether or not you vote for them or not. It doesn't matter. What they care about is securing their position. So don't put them up on a pedestal and go, Ted Cruz, yeah, he's going for it. He's doing everything like that. It's all bullshit. Don't buy into it, folks. Don't buy into it. The political scandal that's going on here in Australia is just an absolute abomination here in Australia, what's going on, where they've weaponized a rape charge, for heaven's sake. The government weaponized, or the opposition weaponized a rape charge to turn the court of public opinion against the government of the day to say ScoMo's a scumbag and he shouldn't get back in. It's just unbelievable. And then they pretended like they didn't know anything about it. Now the evidence has come out saying that they knew about it the whole time. And I look at all of these things and think, these politicians don't care about anything to do with their constituents like they say they would. The whole entire system that we live under is completely fake. It's not run by the politicians. And I call it the paradox of leadership. Here in Australia, we have incredible infrastructure. If you've never been to Australia, when you come here for the first time, you would look at this place and think, wow, man, this place is like just amazing. And it is. I'm still wowed by it every now and then. I look around and I look at the buildings, the infrastructure, the bridges, the roads, the airports, the things that we have here is just, we are so unbelievably lucky. And I call it the paradox of leadership, because how can we have all of this? How can we have this amazing place that we live in? It's just incredible what we have here. And we have such idiots for leaders. That's the paradox of it, right? Is that those people that are in charge are kind of not really in charge. It doesn't matter who the leadership are. It doesn't matter who they are, because the suits behind the leadership are the ones actually running it. Vladimir Putin said that a lot. He's been on camera saying that, someone asked him, well, what do you think about Donald Trump? What do you think about this guy or that guy or this, this person that might be the president? And he kind of just shrugs his shoulders and says, that's just one person. I'm just dealing with that individual. But the reality is the bureaucracy that sits behind that are what make the decisions. And the same is true here in Australia. It doesn't matter who the leadership is, who you voted for, what actual policies that they put forward to you, what political opinions that they have, or what political sway that they do or don't have. It's all complete garbage. It's garbage because the people in the department are the ones that are actually running it. The Director General of that given department is the one that gives the orders based on what the minister is telling them to do, and then the people in government actually go and make it happen. We're very lucky here in Australia. We don't have a deep state or a swamp or a political system based on cronyism like in the United States. We're very, very, very lucky in that respect, because the people that are in government are really good people making their way in the world, making sure shit gets done. And the minister takes all the credit for it. The director generals take all the credit for it. But the reality is the people that are in government are responsible for the incredible infrastructure that we have, for the incredible lives that we're able to leave here or to live here in Australia. That they're the people responsible for it, not the leadership. It's irrelevant who the leaders are. If we have a change of government, like we've had a change of government here in New South Wales, we've got new government in place now. Has anything changed? No. Nothing has changed. In my view, it's almost like a seamless transition from one leadership team to a new leadership team. Sure, they've got new policies, they've got new things going on, but the reality is that the people that are behind that new leadership team, the people employed by the New South Wales government, are still the same. And they're still working the same programs, they're still working the same infrastructure things, everything's the same. It's like, is it any better? Is it worse? No, it's exactly the same. And the reason it's exactly the same is because the people that are really running it are not the leaders that we elect. That's the paradox of leadership. And the paradox of leadership is highlighted a little bit more when you see idiots in charge. When you see people like here in Australia, Lydia Thorpe in charge, or you see someone like Joe Biden that can't string a sentence together is in charge. It really highlights how much more it is actually there, meaning how much the bureaucracy is running the place. So it's a really interesting paradox that's going on. All right, folks, as I close out today's show, I've got a funny little video of Joe Biden. Somebody has taken the time to actually decipher what he's saying. And he's sitting with Rishi Sunak here, the British Prime Minister. And if you read the subtitles, if you're listening to this as a podcast, it's going to be a bit hard for you. But if you're watching this as a video, you'll see the subtitles of what he actually says. And I promise you, it's not a video that is out of context. So sometimes if you join mid-conversation with somebody, like, what are these two guys talking about? It seems like a random conversation. Joe Biden, I promise you, is being put forward as a sock puppet to be propped up as, he's literally a prop of the Democratic Party. The guy, honestly, he cannot string 3 or 4 sentences together, and it's not coherent at all. And it's a little bit funny when you look at it from the outside. The guy trips over, falls over, whatever. You think that that's funny, but it's actually not funny. But when you watch the subtitles here, I promise you can't not giggle a little bit. But it's not funny to make fun of old people or people that are having a hard time in their life. So I want to close out with this little video here. So let's take a look and let's have a little laugh about this topic at the end here.
The residence where I live, and when you were over at Blair House, President Truman was there because they were redoing the White House. He put a hole in the Truman balconies that exist now because of Blair House being built. That second balcony you see, the first balcony you see going up. So at any rate, and there's an awful lot of stories that are told, probably a bunch apocryphal about the former prime minister, like to take baths up the.
What the fuck is this guy even talking about? Rishi Sunak there, sitting there, like what on earth is he talking about? It reminds me of like a 2 or a 3-year-old child when they first learn to talk, and you kind of bend down with them and they're talking, they're having a conversation with themselves, and they're talking about all of these random things all at once, all at the same time, and he doesn't. That's not coherent speech. And when you read the subtitles there and they pull out the actual words of what he's saying and you're spelling phonetically what he's saying, it makes no sense at all. Yet this guy is the leader of the free world and he's up for re-election. Surely that none of that can be real. Surely, I just don't know. It just boggles my mind what's going on with all of this. It's just absolutely ridiculous. All right, ladies and gentlemen, I want to say thank you for joining me here on the Solo Podcast. It's been a little while since I've done that. I made it all the way to an hour on my own. Hopefully you got some information out of that about the biggest story in Western political history. I'm not going to just say Australian or American. I'm going to put us all in that one basket from the Western world. It is the biggest story of all time. If the sitting leader has been found to take a $5 million bribe and he's paid money to get his son into that position on Burisma, and that evidence is proven to be true, that is the biggest story of our Western political system ever in history. It's bigger than that Richard Nixon Watergate scandal. I think it's far bigger than that because that's the scandal of somebody else's time. This is a scandal of our time now. It's just absolutely huge. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for joining me on the live stream. Thank you so much for your comments and your contributions, CP. Appreciate that, mate. Speakeasy as well. Thanks for joining in, mate, and really appreciate your feedback and joining in on the live chat. Don't forget to come on over to your favorite podcasting app, either in Spotify or Apple Podcast, and get a little bit of unspoken truth in your ears. And don't forget to click the link down below in the description for the Telegram channel. That pretty much wraps it up for today's show. I'll be out of here now, and tomorrow I'll be back with Ed. So bye for now. See you, everyone.